Okay, so I want to start with the concept again, going from high to low to entry process to what it looked like if I had difficulty, how I can improve it, right? So this is Simon with Trading Perform Coaching. It's the mid-morning review at 10:28 a.m. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Please take a moment to read this disclaimer if you're watching the video, or simply don't watch the video. Okay, guys, so number one, we came in, right? So if we look from this perspective has our PNF and our profile charts, right? So if we come in here and look at this simply from a day session, right? We'll just change this to 1500. We'll just load 2 days. Okay, so that's today. This is the open today. We gapped up, right? So this is a white zone, and the green area represents single prints. We want to know where we are from a structural standpoint on the trade, right? So again, I'm going to say it again. Higher the time frame, the more value to the decision-making process, right? So next, I had a bias coming on the day, which was I wasn't going to take shorts off the top until I see some kind of break. We've gotten technically some kind of break. They've come in for the retail gap fill all the way down here in the S. We filled Dalton's gap fill over here. We're underneath prior day's high, but above prior day's low. And we've generally targeted for support these single prints, right? These single prints down here, followed by the points of control at 12,580 down to 12,540. Oh, excuse me, I have NQ. Pardon me. Let's switch over. Sorry about that. Here, we'll do VS this time. Same thing, different chart. Apologies. Okay, so RTH only. Same idea, same location. Highest time frame, lowest time frame. So on ES, this is today. We got yesterday's high, right? You can see the consolidation right there. We traded up, right, into and past the yellow zone, right? So normally what I would say, so I want to go through each of my steps as I'm looking at the location, right? So this is a potential failure area, right? This is a old prior day's high. We traded above and rejected back underneath almost immediately. That was good for a scalp, but buyers are in overall control. So it pushes back up, comes to the next resistance area. See how mechanical it was? I'll put an arrow on it so everyone can see it. Resistance 1, resistance 2. Now, this is resistance 3 right here, okay? But it pushed past the yellow zone right before 9 a.m. because buyers were in total control. This is an old gap fill right up here. And then we came back underneath. You'll see once we close, see how this bar closed back underneath right at the bottom of the yellow zone? Backside test, and we went from a PA that was kind of grinding and just running up to a straight out long liquidation, right? But that long liquidation took us back to prior day's POCs, right? So you have two competing interests here, right? One rule says this tends to act as a magnet. If you let that act as a magnet here without taking your rotations down and you chose to short, you got run over. You got stopped, right? If you took it from up here and said, hey, the PA is really slow, which I mentioned in the room. I said, I have a hard time with the PAs like this, right? So this would be a case in point where Peter might say 3907 is my target area where I want to short to 3910. We've been talking about it for a couple of days, and he shorts. And I'd go, Peter, your natural magnet here is going to be that 10,892 to 3892. Wow. To 38.85. That was spot on, right? So the theory, go to resistance, reject, come back, worked, but it didn't work for me. Why? Because I need a certain type of price action going back and forth, as you saw me doing with NQ, and I wasn't willing to short this morning. So even if I saw the short up here, right? I wasn't willing to take it. And then I was looking for the potential long. Again, if you look at this pattern, and you'll see it numerous times, see how you form a little base to the left, and then they come underneath it and they put in a lot of delta, and then they close back above that delta so that you get a little head and shoulders. So we spotted it on NQ, right? So that's what it looked like on ES. This is what it looked like on NQ, right? Same general concept. A lot of delta got put in down here. It was they modified it. They did it over 3 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4 opportunities to get underneath this left shoulder. Or if you look at the structure over here to the left, this old support, they tried to break it, right? Get underneath, failed to do so, pushed, 50-60 back, right? And 50-60 back generates push back towards 24-hour or RTH VWAP. Same exact concept, right? So then in all of that, right? So what happens, as y'all saw, what happens in those areas? Like, how could we set those up better for the long? So over here, here's a good question. In this 1013 to 1022, did we get set up in a pattern we understand? So if we look at the 1.5 range bar, and how would have we made that desertion, what's the word that I'm looking for? Distinction, right? So there's the move off the bottom, right? Here's the move back towards the 50-60. So within here, right, so anyone can answer the question, but back within here, right, we come in, you get a star, speed bar, fractal, 6A, and arrow up. That's a 3-bar combo right there. Coming out of the 50-60, and your stop should have gone behind the 60T retrace. Did that trade work? Yeah, if you took it at 38.96, rolled you up to 39.04. Not a bad trade. Well, how about at the apex down here, right? What did that look like? And that looked pretty good, actually. When you look, again, why am I noting these out, even if I took them in NQ instead of ES? Yeah, I want y'all to learn the pattern, right? So here's my stopped out. So we know when we're trading that we need to get above, and when I mean above, orthodox close above my last stopped out buyer. That is by definition an orthodox close above, right? In addition, I want to string up a 50-60, all right? Okay, so could have this caused me problems here, and how could have I worked it out? How do I need to keep my vision clear, right? So you got a 3-bar combo here. It's stopped, right? But it still was held within the 50-60 the general confines of the 50-60 retrace, and you had your biggest wave to the upside off that move, right? So then we come back in again. You get a 6B star, speed bar, fractal, 6A up. That holds. And then you get another one right to the right of it. And you have a divergent fractal right over here, which we highlighted, right? So then when it trades above the divergent fractal, right, what I would look for is I come in and look for is go, okay, either I'm long here or I want to initiate over here, right? So if I'm looking, the number one thing I'll notice is that there was a little mini head and shoulders over here they tried to hold. See that to the left? It was in the hole while they tried to set that up. See how they came back up on it? That was the head. And so the general rule is when you have a head and shoulders is if you close above the left shoulder, particularly in an orthodox manner, the retrace back in is usually can be bought for the push back up and at least a temporary short squeeze, which is what we ended up with here, right? And I gave you, again, even from this location over here, even from this location right over here, you still got to move from 94 to 01. So now I want to talk about what it looked like, at least in hindsight, to potentially double this trade. What would that look like? Okay, so there's 2 things I could have done. I could have attempted the longs off the bottom. I didn't get a 3-bar combo over here. I did over here, but ultimately this failed, right? And what I didn't have over here is a stopped out buyer. I'm not saying rear view mirror driving it and saying, hey, you should have taken this. What I'm saying is, what are the factors? if you can identify the factors and the patterns that are repeating, you can do it, right? There's no question in my mind. So if you look over here, let's say you took this 3-bar pattern off the bottom. Again, what's the risk at the bottom? You are between the third and fourth rail. You do have a clear target back up to VWAP, but you don't have a stopped out buyer. So just like me, where I took the 50-60 retrace here, so I took this trade and I got stopped here, and I recovered it in Q, but if I'd stayed consistent with the S in terms of taking the trades, I would have gotten stopped here, reloaded here, and, right? So I know I came back to the fourth, almost to the third rail to reset that, right? And once I got above this divergent fractal and my stopped out buyer, both in the same location, right? I could have looked for, now I don't know that this happens every time, but I know it happened this time, right? So I want to go back and look at what's the qualities of the bar that lifts me. And right here, if I had gone long initially, let's say I took it at 90, right? And then I come back I get above my divergent fractal and a backside test. So a great question is, how many times does the divergent fractal hold and how many times does it fail? In this case, it was a parallel divergent fractal, as Randy pointed out. So if I started at 90 and I add again at 95, that's going to give me about a 9250 average on this trade, right? Roughly. Okay. So what does my stop have to be? If 9250 is my break even, I obviously don't want it there. So this would be the consideration. I obviously don't want my stop there, right? This has to come down to a decision of I'm either going to take this trade and it all works on one bar, right, to keep me profitable on the trade, but it probably lowers my chances overall out of 100 tries, right? Where I really want my stop is 1 point below this fractal. So it's 38.9250. I'm probably going to risk double size 1 point and put my stop at 38.9150 is what I'm probably going to do. And then on double size, I at least from 92 to 02, but on double size is the important thing with minimal risk. So that's what I would look for doubling up a position. You may not double up, or you should not double up if you cannot manage your risk on the trade, right? So it would essentially be a 2 point stop on a full size trade or a 1 point stop on that, it would be two, because you doubled up the position, even though you dragged the stop up to 9150, it would still be as if you lost 2 points on a full size position, because you're going to lose 1 point on a double sized position net, right? So that's what I would take out of that and would want to learn from this process for today, right? That gave me my opportunity. Let's go look at the short really quick. If you chose to short up here near the yellow zone this morning, right? So we did push up into that. What I want to focus on is shorts coming out of this third rail. So the first question is third and fourth rail. So I could have taken this on an aggressive trade, but clearly buyers were still in overall control, and I just crossed above VWAP. It's a short trip back to VWAP. Do I really want to take that? Probably not. Up here, right, this is a potential, but there's my stopped out buyer again would require me to get, seller would require me to get underneath VWAP. Don't like that. Finally, we get to this high up here, and on this range bar, I don't get a speed bar fractal, but what I do get is a stopped out seller right here, and when I get it, this is getting underneath that stopped out seller, so therefore this becomes left shoulder, right? Effectively, when you look at that, you're looking for a head and shoulders at that point. And so what I could have done over here on this side of the trade, the problem is we never got a very dramatic stretch away. We were way away from the 24-hour RTH. So now, let's say we were still willing to take the trade. What does this look like? Well, now I have an orthodox close underneath, so I want to bring out my retrace. Why? Not to ask whether it was perfect, but what stop would, the first question I just simply have is if I just took the 50-60, what stop was needed to survive? And the answer is 1 point behind the 786, and you survived that trade by itself on its own merits, right? On top of that, did we get anything that we could work from? Had this star been a speed bar, I would have probably shorted it and probably lost money, because I tend to use that bar as a single bar. And I know by habit, I just put my stop 1 point behind, and it would have gotten taken out over here. I needed to stay cognizant that my stop needed to stay 1 point behind the 786. over here. If I made that decision, I would have survived the trade for a very nice trade. However, reality is I know that I kind of almost automatically, if I see this yellow bar, I try to do the same thing over here, and I'm going to almost always lose a max of 2 points just taking that bar, right? And you can see we just didn't have a 3-bar combo up here. We got the star, and then we got the star down, but I would have liked to have this bar right here, and then it would have been perfect. I would have said, that's exactly what I'm looking for, right? As it is, I didn't get it. When you see we came down and made a new low over here to VWAP, it then naturally retraced back to a 50-60 retrace, right? So what is the 50-60 retrace is doing for us is it's naturally drawing our eyes back up to a correct location for a trade, right? It's at least giving you the power of every retail trader in the world who draws a 50-60 retrace, plus every algo that trades it. At least you know that's the area that they're working. Now, the downside of that is that'll create a lot of false algo readings in here, or if it gets choppy in here, you're really going to have to be committed to something like a 1-point stop behind. That harms me because I want my trade to work immediately. I don't like to kind of sit there and let it percolate, as I discussed this morning, right? And then you'll see when we got underneath VWAP, right? So this is our next clue that we could take a short, and I didn't get a 3-bar combo here. I would have loved it here. So the other thing I could have done is just take my first triangle underneath, my first and second. This is the first one. This was the second one. As long as I took a stop 1 point behind here, I survived. Again, it got choppy in here at 918, but gave you the roll to the downside, and then that set us up for the potential long. So I didn't see a great short setup up there. Even looking the second time, I don't see anything in here that makes me go, wow, I really should have pressed given the context of the straight up that we've had and the desire not to lose money. I think that I would have preferred to just let it play out as it did. And I think that even letting it do that we had good long opportunities in there to make money to the long side. Anyone have any questions over that? Was that helpful, guys? Okay. Randy, that parallel fractals is a great trade you have set up, by the way. Where are we? There we are. So, really good trade. And you can see we're just kind of doing the dance here. So, I'll be back at 12:45, guys. I'll post this up.